All right, welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and this week we have a very special guest. We are here with the one and only Mr. Ken Anderson. Ken, thanks so much for taking the time this week.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, rewinding back a little bit, let's kind of start at your beginnings. You know, growing up as a kid, when did you first discover pro wrestling?
When I was 20 years old, I believe. I mean, if we want to get technical, I watched it briefly when I was a kid, really briefly. And then, it was something that my parents weren't super fond of. I recall them taking away my television privileges for a while, just altogether, and wrestling was roped into that. And when I came back to watching TV, when I got my privileges, because the one thing about my parents when I was a kid was if they told me you're not watching TV for 3 weeks, I wasn't watching TV for 3 weeks. Other kids would be like, parents like the next day would let them back,
Yeah.
But it was also something that I fell into the camp of it's fake. Why do I watch this stuff? It's all fake. So I just never got into it. I gave my friends a hard time that did watch wrestling. And then when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was at a friend's house and my friend sort of forced the issue and said, "We're watching wrestling tonight." I said, "All right, whatever." And he put it on and I saw this bald gentleman driving to the ring in a pickup truck. And just the way that he carried himself, and he beat a bunch of people up and stunned a bunch of people, and he was drinking beer, and I was like, okay, that guy's okay. I'll watch just to see what he will do. And I started doing that every week, and then I got roped into everything else. Pretty soon I was like, well, Undertaker, he's cool too, and Kai and Ty, and it's just like. The dominoes fell shortly after that.
Sure. Once you started feeling a little more comfortable with it, and you're like, all right, let me give it a shot. When did you decide, you know what, this is something I actually want to do myself?
It was something that at the time wrestling had become so ubiquitous. It was just like everywhere, man. Everybody was talking about it. My cats are going crazy.
That's okay.
2 cats, and they're both trying to run across the screen at the same time. They never want to come and sit on my lap. If I begged them all day long, they would never do it. But now they want to come. Sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, just, at what moment did you decide that it was something for you and you wanted to give it a try?
Yeah, it was, come sit on my lap. I guess we're going to do an interview like this.
That's great.
So I was at a party one night. Everybody was talking about it. The people that I worked with talked about it on a regular basis. I worked as a security guard at a nuclear power plant, and we would sit in these little boxes for 12 hours a night and nothing to do, just hoping that somebody would hop the fence, right? And they never did, unfortunately. And we would call each other up. Hey, did you see what happened on Raw the other day? And that would be the extent of my night. I was at a party one night, and somebody said, "Hey, I have a friend who's like this lady that I work with. Her son goes to a wrestling school. He's like, he does it." And it never dawned on me, how do people actually learn how to do this stuff? And so that's all I could think about. I went home that night and I got on the internet. The internet at the time was in its infancy. It was like Ask Jeeves or something like that. I don't think Google existed. And I looked up wrestling schools. And I remember thinking, I'm probably going to have to go to one of the major cities, either Chicago, New York, or LA, to get a wrestling school. And so I looked up wrestling schools in Chicago, and I reached out to one, and he got me in touch with a guy in Green Bay who was just starting his wrestling school. And so when he called me, he said, like, you know, he didn't have any other students before me. I was his first student. And he said, come in, I'll give you a tryout. I think he charged me $175 for a tryout. I went in and immediately fell in love with the ring. I remember seeing that ring for the first time, and it was a shitty ring. It was like a 16 by 16 low rider, so it sat like a foot off the ground.
Yep.
Maybe a foot and a half. And it had, the ropes were kind of saggy. They didn't really give you any spring when you hit them. There were like tape. There was tape all over the ring from little holes and stuff that they tried to patch. Blood everywhere. And I just remember thinking, like, that's amazing. I can't believe I'm stepping foot in an actual wrestling ring.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. No, I just loved it.
So how soon thereafter did you start working on independent shows?
9 months. Yeah,
Wow.
I trained for 9 months because my training was only every Sunday or every other Sunday sometimes. So, you know, it wasn't like I had access to a ring on a regular basis. And actually, had it been up to me, I probably would have trained for another 6 months before I had my first match. I've always been a person that, like, I want to pull the trigger when all the pieces when everything's just right. And it turns out that, like, even in starting a podcast, right? Like, the pieces are never, having kids, the time is never going to be perfect. You just have to, like, sort of get the pieces sort of there, and then just pull the trigger, and then it's a work in progress as we go.
Yeah. And do you remember some of the promotions that you worked for in the independent scene?
Yeah. So in the early days, ACW was now owned by Hornswoggle and based out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. But ACW was the home for me. It was the guy that trained me, ran that promotion. His name was Mike Mercury and Eric Hammers. And the North American Wrestling Federation was run by Randy Ricci, Rockin' Randy, who did some job work and stuff back in the day for WWE, WWF at the time, WCW. He was head of R&B security. I don't know if you remember that from WCW.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Worked for that promotion, and then I started coming over to the Twin Cities and working for Steel Domain Wrestling, SCW, which at the time CM Punk, Adam Pearce, Danny Dominion, Ace Steel, all those guys were making us. Colt Cabana were making Steel Domain Wrestling a thing up in the Twin Cities. So there were a bunch.
Yeah. So you really got your name out there. And at what point was there an opportunity to enter OVW?
So I just kept sending tapes to WWE. I remember I think I was like 9 or 10 months in, and I got the WWE. There was a magazine that came out. It was like the PWI 500 every year, but it always had like the addresses of the major promotions and then also independent promotions in there. Do you recall?
I do. Yes.
Was it the PWI?
PWI, yes. They also had it at the Almanac.
What's that?
It was also in the Almanacs as well, PWI Almanacs.
So I got my hands on that in first smack dab, first page one WWF. And so it had the 1241 East Main Street, Stamford, Connecticut. Whipped up the tape. And I remember there's a local promoter named Dave Hero who runs GLCW in Milwaukee. Good friend of mine now. But I told him that I was going to send this tape, and he was like, no, don't do it. What are you thinking? You're way too green. They're gonna see that tape, and they're gonna think you're green, and that's going to be the end of it. You'll never want to look at you again. And I was like, I just, in my mind, I believe that like I'm gonna continue to improve. So even if I send them this tape and it sucks, 6 months later when I send them my next tape, they're gonna see improvement. And then 6 months later, they're gonna see more, it's so on and so forth. And so I did it, and I also like I held that grudge against Dave for years. Like, screw that guy,
Yeah.
Like I said, we're really good friends now, but I just kept sending tapes, and I remember my very first tape that I sent, crazy. Kevin Kelly called me like 5 days later and said, "Hey, I got your tape, and I like what I saw. I'd like to bring you in as an extra. We're doing loops. We're doing Chicago and Milwaukee this day." And then so I went and did extra work. I think I was able to get in the ring that day and kind of wrestle around with some of the guys. I completely shit the bed. I did not have a good showing for myself.
Yeah.
But on that particular day, there were no opportunities for extras for dark matches or anything like that. And then I just kept sending them. I'd send them another tape, or I would call them. I would say, "Hey, I see you're in. I saw that they were in Cleveland and Detroit," and I reached out to them. "Can I do extra work?" "Yeah, that's cool." And that was it. I drove that loop by myself, and that ended up being my very first match that I had as an extra in WWE. Was against S.A. Rios in Cleveland.
Right, and that was 2001. That was on an episode of Jacked, and one of the programs that were around back then. What was it like working with SA?
Easy, like I think at that point, like if you were in the WWE, you were good. You had to be at a certain level in order to play. He could work with anybody.
All right,
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
The funny thing was, I remember Tony Gurria. Do you remember Tony Gurria?
Absolutely, one of the road agents and longtime wrestler.
He was the guy that would come around and he'd have a list with blank versus Funaki, blank versus, and I remember him going, "Can you do all this Mexican high flying bullshit?" And I said, "Yes." And in my head, I'm going like, "Nope, I don't know any of it," but yep, yes, I can. That was something that my trainers always told me, like, no matter what,
let's go for it.
Can you ride horseback? Yep. Can you scuba dive? Yep. So he asked me, "Can you do this?" And I said, "Yeah." And so then I remember we put the match together. He ended up being the agent on that. He was I guess they call them producers nowadays.
Yeah.
So.
And how was Tony to work with?
He was always awesome. He was super cool with me. And it was one of those things that I did a lot of extra work for WWE between the years, from when I started I think I did that first match that we talked about against SA was in 2000, I want to say. Between 2000 and 2005, man, I probably had 12 or 13 matches between dark matches and Sunday Night Heat matches, Jacked, Velocity,
And who were some of the other talents that you worked with during that period in the dark matches?
So I remember I tagged against Billy and Chuck. I tagged against 3 Minute Warning, who was Rosie and Jamal, Umaga.
Yep.
I believe Teddy Long says that I was the first white boy from the White Boy Challenge for Rodney Mack. I worked Rodney Mack twice. I worked Sean O'Hare. I think I worked William Regal one time. There was quite a few.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit, you've got all these matches under your belt now. You're feeling more comfortable at that point. Obviously, they're happy with you. At what point do you transition from OVW and doing dark matches to getting a contract and entering the WWE?
Well, so I remember I just kept knocking on the door, and I would try to be a sponge when I was there. I would go find. They used to let everybody get in the ring. That was really something that they don't do nowadays. It's like I feel there's a vacuum within. There's great training schools out there, and then you've got the WWE, but like the missing component is how to like bridge that gap.
Right.
There aren't dark matches anymore. It just doesn't happen. There aren't enhancement matches anymore. But it was one of those things, like I just kept having dark matches, and oftentimes Arn Anderson would be my producer, and so he just got accustomed to working with me, and he knew that, he used to tell me, "Sorry, kid, tonight's not your night," and I would say, "Arn, you don't need to tell me that. I understand that. Like, I'm here to make that guy look good," and he knew that. I wasn't trying to put myself over. I think in doing that and making the other person look good, you do put yourself over, right?
Sure.
You make yourself look good. And it was just, I remember Arn told me one time, he goes, "I don't say this very often, but the next time there's a round of hirings that I hear about, I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm going to try." And then I happened to cross paths with Paul Heyman too at that time. And, I was in the ring working out, and Paul pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, who trained you?" And I told him, and then we had some good conversations. He ended up giving me his number and told me to call him. And then I called him for the next 6 months, and he never answered my phone calls.
Oh.
Just because, like, that's just how it goes, right? Like, he's just a busy guy. And so Paul liked me. Tommy was now in charge of doing the extra work.
Yep.
So I had a good relationship with Tommy, and it was like all of those pieces, everybody was kind of like willing to go to bat for me a little bit. And then I remember Davari messaged me one time. Davari's a good friend of mine. He said, "Hey, did you get a call from Tommy this weekend?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, they just hired 8 guys from the Louisville area that are already at OVW." He said, "We just hired 8 guys from there, so I thought you'd probably get a call." And I said, "No." And so I just kind of waited patiently by the phone all weekend, and Monday and Tuesday, nothing happened. And then Wednesday, I thought, I'm going to call Tommy and just check in with him, see what's going on. So I decided I'm going to call him and just check in with him. And I called and said, "Tommy, this is Ken Anderson from Green Bay." That's how I started every conversation with him. And he would always give me, like, if he was busy, he would say, "I need to call you back. I'm busy." And then he would never call me back. And then I'd end up calling him like days later. And he just said, like, Ken Anderson, hang on a second. I could hear him shuffling some papers around. He's like, "Just hang on a second. Can I put you on hold for a second?" And I was like, "Sure." And I was like, he never puts me on hold.
Yeah.
And he came back and he goes, "I've been trying to call you, but your number's disconnected." And I was like, no, it's not. I'm like talking to you on it.
Right.
And he was like, "Oh, is your number blah, 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 blah?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Oh, I've been calling the wrong number." Well, and Tommy, have you dealt with Tommy much?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great
got,
guy. He put it very monotone,
"Oh, well, I was calling to tell you that I got you a job."
Exactly.
I'm in the break room at work wanting to do backflips and having to contain myself. And so we go through this whole thing, and he tells me, I don't know, but they were opening up Deep South at the time. They had talked about it, but they hadn't done it yet. So he said, I don't know if you're going to go to Deep South or OVW. I'll let you know. Just sit tight. And then he goes, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" And I was just like, "Tommy, thank you very much for believing in me and for giving me this opportunity." And he was like, okay, you don't have to go getting all lame on me. and he just completely punted me in the guts. We laugh about it today, but
Yeah. Just the way he is.
That was that, and he told me that because he was calling the wrong number, that he literally was like an hour away from going down. He had a list. He was just gonna assume that he wasn't gonna be able to connect with me, and he was gonna call the next person on that list.
Yep. So United States Championship, only a year into your career. That's your first big title reign. What was that experience like?
I always looked at titles as props. Like I understood it's, but it's also at the same time when you're in the WWE, it's like at the top. That's the top company, so they believe in you to some degree. That generally there have been some questionable champions in the past.
Sure.
Where you can say like, oh, that person just got written in there, like David Arquette, for instance, right?
Right.
But it was just like it was a cool. I at that time it was like I just viewed it as this is my job. This is okay. Tell me what to do.
Yeah. And then of course, Money in the Bank 2007. Another big night. It's WrestleMania 23. What was that experience like, being a part of WrestleMania for the first time?
That felt bigger.
Yeah.
Obviously. And going into it, we had 4 days. I think we worked on it for 4 days leading up to. Generally speaking, when matches are put together, they're put together on the day. Those that are watching, when you see a matchup on Monday Night Raw, generally those people found out that they were wrestling each other at noon that day or at 2:00 in the afternoon, and they've had a couple hours to put that match together that you're seeing. WrestleMania, on the other hand, you have like 4 days where they get everybody together in a room and you sort of start workshopping and figuring out, planning, mapping things out. And for the first 2 days that we put that together, Edge was going over that. Like they were going to have Edge end up victorious. And like day 3, they said, well, we're going to put it on Kennedy. So I, in my head knew that this could change again.
Sure.
So I'm not going to get excited about it. It's just, all right, this is what we're working towards. And so just putting it together was a cool experience. I mean, it was my second WrestleMania that I was around. WrestleMania 22, I was with the company, but I was injured. So I had experienced all the sort of like pomp and circumstance surrounding WrestleMania, what that felt like. But walking out on that stage for the first time, I remember walking into Ford Field and walking up onto that ramp. Yep. And looking around and thinking, wow, this is crazy. This is huge. WWE, it was the first time that WWE had gone back to the large venues.
Right.
The year before, the Rosemont Horizon was host of WrestleMania 22, which only holds, I think, 20,000 people. Now we're 83,000 in Ford Field, Detroit. And I remember thinking, like, this is crazy. This is going to be crazy. And then when I walked out, it just felt like a really packed 20,000 seat arena. It didn't look like this, what it actually is. And so we did the match, and you're just sort of on autopilot. At that point, you're wrestling so much that it's just, whether you're wrestling, there's the same stakes, I feel, wrestling at WrestleMania as there is working on a host show. You're just like, you just do it. That's your job. And it wasn't until after I got done, I went, because we were on first, and I went up, I got showered, and I went up to the skybox where the families were. And then I looked down and I saw this tiny little ring giant sea of people, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that.
That really put it into perspective at that point.
It did.
Yeah. So 2010, TNA, of course, while you were there in TNA, two-time champion, some great accomplishments there. What were the differences between TNA and WWE as far as the atmosphere, the locker room, the camaraderie? Was it pretty much the same, or was it a little bit different?
I think camaraderie, roughly the same. The boys have always been awesome, no matter where you go. But there was definitely an intentional sense of walking on eggshells at the WWE. People were, and I didn't feel that way. Like, I was always pretty confident in my spot, but I knew that there were other people. I could see it. You can sense it when people are like afraid of their, they're not afraid of their own shadow, but like, I don't know how else to put that. Like, is today the day where they're going to call me, where Johnny's going to call me and say, we wish you the best in all your future endeavors.
Right.
And, they would do things from time to time, they would punish people. You'd see somebody doing something really kind of crazy or gross on TV, and you'd like, is that Vince just punishing that person? Are they testing him? There's always that. And when I got over to TNA, there's none of that. It's just everybody's there to have a good time. Everybody's there to work hard. In fact, I know of a story. Paul Heyman had reached out at one point, was talking to Dixie Carter about coming on board. And he told her, hey, you have to get rid of this person, this person, this person. And it was nothing personal. It was just like he felt that it was very heavy with a lot of the legends. And he was like, we got to get rid of some of these guys. And you give me one or two of them to bring in and showcase every year for like a big pay-per-view moment or something like that. But we can't do it. And she was like, they've done nothing to deserve to be fired. And that was, nobody was in jeopardy of losing their job over at TNA. It was like, your job was very, very secure.
Wow, that's great.
So from a business, if you look at it from a capitalistic, just strictly business standpoint, like that's not the smart thing to do, but it sure did lend itself to positive vibes throughout the locker room.
And obviously you've showed up back up in TNA. Comparing the two eras of TNA, is there a difference, or does it same feel?
Same feel, man. Same feel. It was just as welcoming, just as inviting to different faces. Man, and a lot of old faces that I was familiar with.
Yeah. Back home in a way. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your encounters over the years with Vince McMahon, what were they like? What was he like?
Somebody just asked me about this last night. All generally positive. Like, he never messed with me. I've seen him mess with people. I've heard stories of him messing with people that are like nightmare versions of stories. But I always had pretty positive interaction with him. In fact, at one point he was like, I want you to start hanging out with me. This was right when I got on board. It was like, I want you to learn the ins and outs of this business. And I just never took him up on it, which I don't know. Hindsight, it is what it is. Like, I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want to be a kiss ass. And I felt like I didn't know any other way to go about doing that without feeling like a kiss ass. So,
any memories of working with CM Punk over the years?
We rode together a little bit. There was a funny thing. Like, I didn't like Punk for a while. So I think it was my second show, his first show. We were on the card together. It was for that North American Wrestling Federation in like Whitewater, Wisconsin. And he, I don't know what he wrestled as, but I don't think he wrestled as CM Punk that night. It was like they had him wearing like pantyhose over his face or something like that. It's the Goon maybe, or some variation of the Chicago Goon. And then fast forward, do you remember Ian Rotten in IWA Mid-South?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was kind of when I was coming up, it was a big deal to get booked for IWA. And every year they did, they started, it was called the Sweet Science 16 tournament. It was 16 wrestlers, and then they changed it to when Ted Petty passed away, they changed it to Ted Petty Invitational Tournament.
Right. Rock and roll.
I believe a 2-night show. And once a year. And it was kind of a big deal to get booked for IWA to begin with. And Punk and Ace Steel and Dave Prazak were doing commentary, and I wrestled against Austin Aries in one of the opening contests, and those guys just buried us. So the entire, from the time Aries came through the curtain to the time that we both left, like they just buried us. And I remember like I did not actually cross paths with Punk for quite a while after that. Years later, I was on an independent show with him, and I just, can I talk to you for a second? And I pulled him into a different room, and I said, do we have heat or something? Like, and then he didn't know where I was coming at it from. And I said, and I laid out the scenario, and I said, like, for one, I'm waiting for this tape, right? I can't wait to see this tape of my match. And then when I get it, I'm watching it, and you guys are just burying us the whole time. Is there a problem? And he was like, no. And he gave me like the deepest, most sincere, there was no yeah, but he gave me like a genuine apology. And then we squashed it. But I still sort of held that grudge. And then when I was a Paul Heyman guy. And then when I was getting pulled up to the active roster, Paul was bringing Punk up from the indies. And he was using him a lot. That became his guy at OVW. And I was like, fuck that guy, I hate him. And Paul actually was like, hey, and he took us out for sushi one night. And we just sat and talked and got to know each other and just completely squashed everything. And we became good friends. So
that's great.
That's my Punk story.
Awesome. Now, what was it like seeing your action figure for the first time in stores, or seeing yourself in a video game for the first time?
So I'm a gamer. So that's one thing that I just couldn't wait to see. Very, very cool. Although I will say that I'm not a wrestling game aficionado. I'm not a big fan. I'm kind of a button masher. I don't like fighting games really. Right. So I played it for about 10 minutes, and then that was enough. I'm not very good at it. But definitely a bucket list thing. Figure thing. It's funny because WWE never gave us, they would never send us our action figures. We had to go purchase them on our own. So I would be at at Target with my action figure, and the teller would be beep, and is that you? Yeah, and then just that kind of like, is this person judging me for buying my own action figure, or do they think it's cool?
Right. Exactly. Now, who are some of your favorites to work with over the years, whether it be TNA or WWE?
So many to list. I think the best performer that I've ever been in the ring with all time, hands down, is Shawn Michaels. And that I did not like him personally, but he's just so good. That was at the time I didn't like him, but things have changed now. Taker, Batista, Matt Hardy and I had some really great matches. stuff that I was really proud of. Jeff Hardy, Bully Ray, Kurt Angle. My favorite match that I've ever been a part of was the cage match that I had with Kurt, 2009 Lockdown for TNA.
Yep.
I just realized somebody pointed this out, and maybe it was Kurt himself, that like his career was actually longer at TNA than it was. He spent more time in TNA.
Right. I remember hearing that just about a year ago, and I was surprised to hear that. But yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are the ones that like pop into my head.
Yeah. And 2016, you started your own pro wrestling school, the Academy, which is still going strong today. Why don't you tell us all about your school, and if there's any aspiring wrestlers out there, how they can go about getting involved?
Yeah, it was just something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to. The experiences that I've had in the business are just so amazing, so fun, and I don't want to just tell people about it. I want you to experience that for yourself. You know, I want you to have those moments. And so, like, seeing my students get those calls, or hearing about them getting those calls, watching their matches unfold was, big ticket matches and things like that on the indies, or even getting a call to do extra work for WWE, which is a little different nowadays. Like I said, there is no opportunity for matches right now. But that's what it's all about. But I just never felt like I had enough experience. And even when I was in TNA, I remember thinking about starting the school, and I just felt like, not yet. I'm not ready yet. And Davari it was late 2015, he started like, let's do it. Let's open a school. And so we did. And it turns out it's one of the best things, one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. I really, really enjoy training people. Like you said, 2016, we started, still going strong. We have some notable students that have come out of the academy. The biggest one right now, I would say, would be, Tiffany Stratton. She's done okay for herself.
Yeah, she's doing all right.
Dante and Darius Martin over at AEW, Julia Hart. And there's a bunch more that are on the cusp that I think are ready to go, could go. There's a bunch of people that are actually TV ready. So we'll see what happens. But we train 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. And we cover everything from roles to psychology, cutting promos, character development, safety, etiquette, the mistakes that I've made in the wrestling business, and I've made a lot of them. I hope to pass that on to my students so that they don't have to, I don't want them to have to touch the burner like I did, so to speak. But my number is all over my social media, the number for the Academy. If you go to my Instagram or my Facebook, my phone number is on there. If anybody's interested, if anybody lives in the Twin Cities area or would like to relocate, please reach out to me. I'll give you the number here. It's 507-722-2776. I gave that number away on the Chris Van Vliet podcast that I did.
Oh, yeah.
And I got 600 messages within a week. I got 600 messages.
My goodness. Wow.
And I pretty much, I responded to every single one of them.
Wow.
That's
an accomplishment.
There were some that I missed, I know, but like I genuinely like went through and most of them were just, hey, just want you to know I'm a fan. Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me because it does.
Well, it's great that you had that one-on-one interaction, It's good. So Howard Finkel, greatest ring announcer of all time, arguably. Obviously, he was there when you were there in the WWE. What are your personal memories of Howard? So
Howard was the guy that would Howard was the guy that I would call and go, Howard, I missed my flight. So he handled all the travel for WWE. And I called Howard quite a bit, especially at the tail end of I never called him going out. I always made it, but it was that last night. Sometimes, you have a big, long, productive loop. You wrestle 4 nights in a row, and then we go out a little bit. And sometimes at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. wake up call just came a little bit too early. So there were a lot of mornings where Howard, I missed my flight. Don't worry about a thing. Go back to bed, or stand by. I'll call you shortly, or text you shortly. And he would say, "Oh, you've been switched to this flight. No problem."
Wow.
Yeah, I remember one night for my birthday going out with Taker and Matt Hardy, and we drank like a half a bottle of Jack Daniels between the three of us. And my flight was supposed to be like, my flight was at 5 a.m. So the wake up would have been 3 o'clock in the morning. We were close to the airport. And I just remember opening my eyes and light is pouring through the curtains. Like, it's definitely not 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was healing a room at the time with Matt Hardy. And he was like, "It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." I called Howard. "Your flight's taken care of. Don't worry about it. Go back to bed. You got another hour to sleep." So
That's great.
yeah.
So when it comes to the creation of your gimmick, how did that come about? Was that all you 100%, with the look, with the microphone, announcing yourself, and how did it come about saying your name twice?
So I used to announce basketball games when I was in high school. And somewhere along the way, I don't know if it was one of the other teachers or a parent said you should if you ever watched old boxing, they would say their last name twice. And I think they showed me a video of it or just demonstrated it for me. And so I just started doing it, and it got over with our class and the students and, the parents, and even the parents from the other team would come over and say, like, "Keep it up, good work." And so when I got away from high school, I completely forgot that it was like I did so much stuff after high school before I got into wrestling that I just kind of forgot about that. And then when Paul Heyman came in and took the pencil, like the third week that he was at OVW, he said, "Tonight I want you to go out there, cut the ring announcer off, cuss him out." It was Dean Hill was his name at OVW. He said, "Cut him off, cuss him out, dress him down, and then you do your own big introduction." And he sort of like Paul would like do his little version of what he was envisioning. So he sort of did what I do, and and then I just added my own little twist on it. And then when I got in the ring, so I planned it all out, what I was going to say, and then I got in the ring, and then I just happened to, in that moment, remember, and I hit my last name twice. And when I came through the curtain, everybody was like, "That, keep doing that." And like I always say, the boys in wrestling we've seen it all. So when you can pop the boys, you're onto something.
Right, exactly.
So and because we understand the ins and outs of the business and like working the crowd and manipulating the crowd and what that takes, when you see something good. Yeah. And so people were like, keep doing that. And then that was my thing then, just like that. And maybe 3 weeks later, Tommy called me and said, "They would like to see you at SmackDown this week. They want you to do your gimmick." And that was it.
And when it came to the tights and the costume, did you create all your own stuff, the logos? Yeah.
No, that was all me. That was all definitely all me. The one thing I will say is this is my natural hair color. When I got to OVW, before I got to OVW, I had bleach blonde hair. And then when I got there, I just let it go to my natural hair color again. And Steve Kern came down. They used to send the agents down, the producers down, every couple months just to see what was going on and see if they could offer any advice. And he saw me and he was like, "You look, I was in good shape." He's like, "You're in good shape. You're a good wrestler. Your in-ring skills are good. You just kind of look like a guy, though. Like, there's nothing that if I walked by you in the grocery store and I looked at you, I wouldn't think, oh, that guy's a pro wrestler." And that was sort of, he felt that people should, like pro wrestlers, if you wanted to really be noticed, that you should be the guy that when you sit down at a restaurant and the people are next to you, they look over and go like, "I don't know what that guy does, but it's something. Like, he's something." And so he didn't tell me what that was. He's like, "I don't know what that means or what that is." And I went home that night and I bleached my hair and I bleached my goatee. I had a goatee at the time. And I came back and Steve was like, "Yep, that's what I'm talking about." Yeah. And so, that was the extent of, as far as my look goes, that was the most input that I really had from somebody else.
Nice. So you worked with Eddie Guerrero just 2 days before he passed away. What was Eddie like as a man, and what was it like working with Eddie in the ring?
Eddie was just, the cool thing about him was he was so giving with his knowledge. He wanted to help people. I always felt that way generally on SmackDown. It was like there was a mountain and all these guys are up on the top and they were they could have been kicking rocks down over the side and pouring buckets of hot oil over the side and stay off my mountain. This is my mountain. But they were instead extending ladders, rope ladders and ropes and reaching out their hand like, "Come on, and that was the general feeling that I got from everybody, including Eddie. And the one thing I will say is, like, we didn't talk about a whole lot of that match. The only thing that we really talked about and walked through was the finish. Everything else was, he was just like, "Just listen to me." And it was just walking. And what you see in that match was us just working on the fly for the most part.
Yeah. So 2025, I mean, it's the John Cena retirement tour. What are your memories of John over the years working with him? And once he retires, who do you think will be that next big star? Is there somebody there now in the business that kind of stands out to you?
I never really had like great feelings working with John Cena. We were never very close. Never had a great working relationship. I always felt like he was working against me. But I will say, with that being said, he's obviously he's the man, he's been the man in the business. And I think it was kind of a crazy thing for him, just to witness the Cena sucks, let's go Cena sucks thing, and how he was still the top guy with, that was just an amazing, somebody should make a college course on that alone someday, a study in that, how that was successful and what made it successful, but as far as somebody that's going to grab that, nobody in particular. I don't really, I'm not plugged into the product 100% right now, but it seems to me that the guys that are the top guys are already they're on their way out the door too, kind of they're not far behind.
Yeah.
Roman and Cody and those, AJ's about to start his own retirement tour, I believe, right?
Yes. Yep.
I can't think, maybe if you threw out some names, but nobody stands out to me, I guess.
Seems like a lot of fingers are pointing to Braun Breaker. A lot of people mention him as kind of an up and coming star. Bronson Reed is another one.
Does he have the talking ability? Can he cut a good promo?
That's the thing. Not really, or there hasn't been any instances where he has yet. They haven't really given him the mic too much.
Yeah. Is there anybody that can talk, that has like the total package where they can talk, they can work, they can?
It's funny. I mean, somebody who's been doing it for a long time is LA Knight, and I think he's great on the mic. He's over with the fans, but for whatever reason, they're just not giving him that next level opportunity. It seems anyway. But I could see him moving up easily because the fans are already backing him, and he's kind of the full package. So,
but again, you're looking at a guy who's like, he's 50 or almost 50.
Right. That's the thing. He's already been there for a long time. TNA, WWE.
Yeah. So he doesn't have a whole, like as far as shelf life, as far as somebody like, Cena carried that mantle for 10 years.
Right.
He carried the company on his back. I don't know that I see anybody, aside from the guys that are there right now. Here's the thing about WWE right now that's unique. Everybody's green. Like the newer guys, even the guys that have been there, like aside from those ones that we just talked about, everybody's pretty green. There isn't a whole lot of opportunity. I watched a SmackDown. I sat in the crowd for a SmackDown here in the Twin Cities. I asked one of the producers, one of my friends, I was like, why are there so many mistakes? I'm seeing a lot of mistakes happening on live TV. And they were like, because there's no reps, like there's no house shows anymore. We used to iron out all the kinks on house shows. You wrestle that often, which is a catch-22 because like it's a positive that people aren't having to destroy their bodies on that type of schedule with no off season. But like they're also at the expense of things looking crisp and smooth and fluid.
Sure.
So then you got 4-year vets working with 4-year vets. There's a lot of that.
Anybody come to mind in particular that you always wanted to work with, but for whatever reason, schedules never came together and you never got that opportunity? Any era that you've been a part of?
I mean, like LA Knight, I did have an opportunity to work with him very briefly in NWA, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like we could, and people always make the comparisons. Like I get a lot of questions about his promo ability, and like people compare us to each other. I think it would be a fun exercise if nothing else.
Yeah. And did you have a favorite referee to work with over the years?
Favorite ref? Earl Hebner is always my favorite, With in TNA, used to try to pop Earl, just make him laugh. And we did just about every night. We'd do something just to get him to laugh.
Yeah. Any memories from any of the magazine shoots or promotional photo shoots, or memories of the photographers themselves, anything like that?
Nothing crazy. Like I did a magazine, like a photo shoot for the WWE magazine in Stamford. That was a really cool kind of just a cool production. One of the things that WWE was really good at was those ID shoots where you see, like in the build-up for a pay-per-view match or a PLE match now, they call them. There was, they did these shoots there was a prison in Pennsylvania. I want to say it was like in Philly or Pittsburgh. There was like an old dilapidated prison. And we did some cool photo shoots where they had some smoke and, you could see the crumbling walls and the bars and stuff like that. Then the first one I did was they had all this rain falling behind us and they had us doing all kinds of different posing and stuff like that. And then they would say, whatever, Eddie Guerrero versus Mr. Kennedy. And then they would show those video packages.
Nice.
That stuff was always really cool.
So somebody who's on the fence about getting into the business, what advice do you have for that individual?
Well, I don't know about nobody ever had to tell me. Like I was never on the fence as far as like like, you can do this. Just know that no matter who you are, no matter what, not everybody can be a WWE superstar, but you would be surprised. There have been guys over the years who everybody sort of like that. I never thought that guy would be a WWE superstar, and it turns out they are. James Ellsworth, for one, nobody ever thought, when that guy walks down the street, nobody goes like, "Oh, that's definitely a WWE superstar."
Right.
So just know that, like, if you put in the time and the effort and you learn to not be afraid to hear the word no, you can do it.
Yeah.
But also know that nobody's calling you. Like, nobody, they're not going to call you. They're not going to call me. They're not going to call most people. The only people that they might call are like Brock Lesnar, somebody like that. But if you don't have that type of build or that type of backstory, that nobody's going to call you. So you need to get yourself out there and put yourself out there, get trained properly. There's tons of great, reputable wrestling schools around the country. And then just work and network as much as you can and take opportunities and take risks, calculated risks, and then just get yourself out there.
And in closing, fast forward many years from now, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I just hope that people were entertained by the stuff that I did in the ring. I hope that there were some stories that resonated. That's really all I've ever wanted to do, was just tell stories and have fun. And I hope that I can pass my knowledge on to enough people, and then hopefully that knowledge continues to get passed down. So
awesome. Well, Ken, thank you so much for joining us. It's the All Access Entertainment Podcast for Mr. Ken Anderson. I'm Joseph Bruen, and we will see you next time.